order. And I like to call the meeting to order by remembering that April 4th, unfortunately, has a significance that is painful. As we're talking about Betty's pain, we have other pains associated with April 4th, and that is the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. So I would just like for us to be silent for a minute and remember the work that he did, the impact he had on our country, and just like think what this country could be like if we did not lose Martin too soon. So just a minute of quiet, please. Thank you all very much. And if anybody wants to say something, the floor is open. We can take a couple of minutes just for reflection if anybody wants to share.
I'd like to just say that I remember that day the same as I remember the day that Kennedy was killed. And I would venture to say most of us who were old enough, who were grown, remember exactly where they were, exactly what they were doing. And I was sitting in front of the TV with my two children, waiting on the news to talk about his speech the night before. And it came across the screen that he had been assassinated. And I was just stunned, and my children were looking at me like, what's the matter? And tears were streaming down my face. And I was like, Dr. Martin Luther King is dead. And it was just an unreal moment, and I'm sure anybody else who remembers that day can remember exactly where they were and what they were doing on April 4th, 1968, which was 54 years ago.
I was a little girl at the time, and I knew that the community was upset because folks took to the streets. But I tell you, the moment of reflection is when I when I was in Atlanta some years ago and went to the monument and saw the monument. Oh my God, it chilled me to my core. And I am looking forward to going back there, feeling that same feeling, and connecting with that kind of history. And needless to say, for all of us that are on here, that the fact that we have a qualified, I want to say Black woman, but I'll call her African-American female, that is set to make history, our history, but yet still face, the challenges that Dr. Martin Luther King walked and talked and gave his life for. I hopefully will keep us all, fighting the good fight and stuff and not giving up. So it's again, it's just a position of with the King family, and also like even with Betty, I don't know what that feels like, but I certainly connect to the core in terms of the pain and stuff. So I'm glad to be a part of the good fight on this side of what Dr. Martin Luther King represented.
And we're glad that you're here, a new board member and committee leader. We volunteered you for all kinds of stuff. So we're glad you're here, Mary. And if you don't have the personal mystery or history, it's accessible to all of us in that museum. My husband and I went to the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, and the hotel, and it's a reminder of all the struggles when we have our struggles, and we see that sadly, some of them are the exact same. It is very uplifting to see what people went through and how they came through. So let's keep rolling.
Amen. Amen. Anybody else wants to say something? I can give you one more minute if anybody wants to say something. Um, okay, all right. So any committee reports? Sylvia, I want you to keep talking and talk about our submission to the climate action plan.
Yes, thank you everyone for who came to the Climate and Environmental Justice Committee meeting, and Ann Sabolskis did a great job of synthesizing the various pillars. We had a very robust discussion, and between board members and executive committee, we got approval, and our submission as Chicago Women Takes Action was turned in on time, and it's part of our mission to both be impactful and to be known as an organization that will take the time to step in and speak up. So that happened. And thanks to Sherry and everyone else who helped along the way.
Okay. Any other reports?
Donna and I have not met, so we don't have a report.
Okay.
Well, we can say the health committee is working on, I think we said this at the board meeting, but the health committee is working on questions for potential electoral candidates, questions regarding health that can be used either for national, local candidates. And also, we've been working with the Chicagoland Vaccine Partnership just to look at how the treatments are, how people can access the treatments for COVID. And the last thing is Planned Parenthood has put out another call for another potential march in June when the Supreme Court will be reviewing Dobbs versus Jackson and the potential loss of Roe v. Wade. So Deb and I are going to be on the call, and we will keep everyone updated.
Terrific. Jane, you got here just in time to bring us up to date if you have a committee report.
Well, we have we're going to have a speaker. I actually didn't let Dee know yet. So Maria Haddon at our next committee meeting, which is the 4th Monday of this month, I think it's the 25th. So Maria Haddon, the alderman of the 49th Ward, is co-sponsor with Sophia King of a new ordinance to stop no-knock warrants. And so she's going to come and speak to us about that and other policy matters relative to police and gun violence and related issues. So we'll, that's our latest. So we're tracking both the progress on the ordinance, which now is a department of the city and police accountability, which is, you know, is only as good as how much we push and press and demand that things happen. So it's a potential, but not a realization yet. And then looking at, you know, tracking other legislation. So that's probably the most important part of the report right now.
All right, and she's going to come to one of your morning meetings,
Yes.
Maria? Okay.
Yeah, and we'll send a note out to if folks want to join us. We'll make it possible.
Okay. All right, so no more committees. I'm going to turn this mic over to Sylvia, unless there's something else.
Yeah, I hope that Holly, who is one of our contemporary members who we had asked to introduce Jen, we're always trying to get the intergenerational vibe going. I hope she got the Eventbrite link. You know, sometimes that's a struggle.
You want me to, as you introduce Jen, you want me to send her a note?
Yeah, just send her
Okay.
that with the link if you don't mind, but I am
Okay.
thrilled to introduce Jen. And the way this will work, she's got so much to say. I'll do an intro, maybe tag teaming with someone else, but then I'll ask a couple of questions, but it really is her opportunity to both give us, in answering those questions, an overarching statement. And then we want to hear from you. These are really powerful and both invigorating and dangerous times in Springfield for the kind of legislation that we care about. Jen is the executive director for the Illinois Environment Council. We call it IEC. It is a pivotal organization that is a key partner with things like the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition. And it is just a great membership organization as well. I'll give a plug. And over the last decade, she has grown the organization, increased staffing fivefold, and increased the budget and affiliate organizations. She has drafted, negotiated, lobbied, and passed hundreds of bills in Springfield while working to build the power and expertise of the environmental movement. We won't let her leave without saying something that's near and dear to her heart, which is how more women and people in later stages of their life can become lobbyists and can get involved in those issues. And she's just done some tremendous work. And I think many of our members are aware of CEJA, which became the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act after we used to call it something else. And at a point when things were stalled at the federal level, it was hailed as groundbreaking legislation. And we can be proud of our part in, getting the word out, in, being supportive as CWTA. And it was so pivotal that when they were in Glasgow with the big environmental meeting, it was something that could be bragged about, and JB was proud, and we got a United Nations award, and it had equity at its core. And now it's under attack. So Jen, I will ask you to both say how we got that important legislation and what the challenge is now, and the things that you'd like us to know, and feel free to speak about, in answering those questions, but maybe 15 minutes or so, and then we'll open up for questions. And if you go a little longer, that's fine too. So hopefully that's good for everyone. And this is the sign language applause. Jen Walling, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. And thanks to Jackie, especially for the invite to this. Jackie is somebody who I admire so much for all of the work that she's done on the transportation and environment space. Really appreciate it. And I see a lot of women on here that I didn't expect to, that I know that I really look up to. So maybe I'm coming into this a little intimidated talking about our work, because I know a lot of you are experts in organizing and policy and activism, but I'm excited to share with you what I think is a really important victory. And, I know that a lot of us, when we've won things, especially in Springfield or the Chicago City Council, sometimes we win, but we have to say, oh, it was the first step and we're going to have to come back. We're going to have to do more. This was just a first step. But I think when we passed the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act last year, it was one of the first times I haven't had to say, this is just a step, because it was a really tremendous bill and framework for how we're going to tackle climate change quickly within the state of Illinois. So I want to talk a little bit about how we got there. And I'm really just excited to answer any questions that folks have. Just a little bit of my background before we get to Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. I started in this role, as Sylvia said, in 2011. IEC has been around, though, since 1975 and was formed as a coalition organization of different environmental groups within the state. So we were actually formed by groups like the Sierra Club, the Isaac Walton League, the Audubon Society. They all got together in the 70s, said that we did not have a consistent voice in Springfield. We need a group that is our trade association that lobbies for us. So that's how Illinois Environmental Council was formed. And since then, it has been our job to really work on making sure every environmental issue is looked at. Other groups, you have priorities that they work on in Springfield, and we will work with their lobbyists and things, but we have to take whatever is given to us. So whenever a legislator has their own idea, I got to work on that too. I hate it when they have their own ideas. But more and more when stuff comes from the community, we're aware of what's coming and really excited to, to bring that and to work with lawmakers on the different things that we have to do. But, at this point, we have a lot of other groups that have their own lobbyists, and we're really excited to work together with them and make sure that everybody's resources are well used. And so just talking a little bit about just the victory that we had last year. I mean, working on climate has been something that I've been doing even before I took this job, but definitely in starting this job right away, we were working on clean energy issues. And of course, even 10 years ago, I could not speak about climate when I was working on clean energy issues. It was about the energy system, et cetera. And more so than that, we couldn't talk about equity and racial equity when we were talking about solutions to climate change. And things have advanced in what we're able to move forward. And so that has been really exciting. So, when I started, there was a really big bill on ComEd that we tacked little pieces onto. And then just different things that have happened throughout the years that were small pieces of renewable energy, small goals, et cetera. And so with this bill, we really looked at, the Illinois, the IPCC has said that we need to address carbon emissions by the end of this decade. So we need to address carbon emissions by 2030, getting them as close to zero in certain areas as we can to avoid the really devastating and catastrophic impacts of climate change that are already happening and will be happening more often in the coming decades. And so we had I don't know, I'm thinking about how far back to tell all of this story, but I'll tell a little bit, and then I will go into this just the I said I couldn't talk about climate when we first started this in 2014. Obama had a clean power plan, and the Illinois legislature proactively passed a resolution opposing the clean power plan. And so anti-climate change resolution, that we had a majority of lawmakers just in 2014 that were anti-climate change. And I think that we have definitely reversed that. Not necessarily a majority of lawmakers that prioritize climate change, but definitely not anti-climate change lawmakers. So that was a little bit 2014. And then, we had the Rauner administration for a while, which was a tough time for a lot of us. No budgets, et cetera. And it was really hard to negotiate an energy bill, especially when that governor came in at the last second and removed a lot of energy efficiency programs, especially for multifamily homes and low-income people, and just removed portions that made industry not have to pay. So it was really frustrating, but we did pass a big climate bill at the end of 2016 in the Rauner administration, just before or just after the former president won. And so that was is a little bit of a victory in terms of where we had gotten then and where the nation was heading. It was tough. We immediately learned our lessons from the way that was put together to try to put together something new. And so we focused a lot on what we called Listen, Lead, Share, which was going around and having focus groups, having town halls, having community meetings all over the state of Illinois. We had one in at least every Senate district, all 59 of them, maybe more than that in terms of where we held them with thousands of people. And we took community feedback on climate solutions and how they were going to impact people in their community. So we asked questions about accessing electric vehicles all over the state. In rural Illinois, in the south side, on the north side, we asked questions all over the place of what are your barriers to these climate solutions and how can we make them more accessible? And that is what we did for years to come up with what was first the Clean Energy Jobs Act, and then we have rebranded as Climate and Equitable Jobs Act and what we finally passed. And I'm really pleased of what we ended up with a lot of the same structure. So it was definitely tough going. It was definitely torture last year with the pandemic. And there were a lot of stops and starts where normally legislative session ends May 31st. And we ended up in June and July and August and finally passing it in September of last year. So I'll just give you a brief rundown of what's in it, and then I'm happy to take questions. So this bill, it's 100% clean renewable energy by 2050 is the policy of the state of Illinois. We are closing all of the power plants that are powered by fossil fuels by 2045, but most of them being closed by 2030, which is really exciting. We are closing all of the coal and natural gas plants or converting them to things like green hydrogen or solar power. So just really exciting stuff there. But I think even more exciting than those portions are the portions that we did on workforce and job transition. And there's a portion on job transition in communities where there are coal plants. Why are environmentalists thinking about that? But in 2019, a quarter of Illinois' coal capacity closed because of just competition with natural gas. And when that happened, people were out of a job 30 or 60 days before Christmas with no notice. So making sure that when workers in those communities are going to lose their job, they have access to job training benefits, they have access to knowing that they're going to lose their job a year in advance. They have access to property taxes, jobs in their community. So we're not seeing that suffering in all the places in Illinois that might be relying on those coal plants. And then there is a huge portion on workforce development that goes from just employment barriers to investment barriers, just all the way. So there's a portion, for example, we started new job training programs through the through the previous bill that was focused on foster children and returning citizens from prison. And so we have expanded those programs in this, but also gave those folks access to programs to make so, if you're in an apprenticeship program with the union, you're getting paid and you're getting all of the different pieces. If you're doing a community college job training program, you're not getting books, you're not getting transportation, you're not getting childcare. So making that sure that people that need things to be able to succeed have that funding to be able to get through the job training program and then get the job. And then there are portions that are diversity requirements with renewable energy credits to make sure that we're hiring people in solar and wind jobs, and then investment items. So making sure that contractors who own businesses have access to investments. And then just that's a little bit on the workforce development. I'm really proud of that portion. And then just finally, there's a portion on electrification of vehicles, but there's a lot more work we're going to have to do there. And a lot on utility accountability, making sure that we're working on undoing all of the damage that has been done to the state by ComEd. And I don't know, just we're super excited about, and energy efficiency. There's a huge portion. We're very excited about what has passed and the benefits that it's going to bring and getting rid of carbon in Illinois. So that's just a little bit of a summary. And I think I spoke for a little more than 15 minutes. I thought I was going to be less than 15 minutes. So
you are perfect. I am going to ask about the attack bill because there's CEJA has money, millions that was coming from the state that would make the equity work real. And can you give us a quick summary of what the challenges are? Because then perhaps it can lead into more questions and how we can help.
Sure.
And get your questions ready, everyone.
Okay. So what's going on right now in Springfield that we could use your help on is that there's definitely efforts to roll back the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, and there will continue to be. We're going to have to do defense on this all the way as we do implementation. And this is a shorter session, so maybe they have less of an opportunity. But there is a technical fix with the workforce programs, which is $180 million a year that are going to these various workforce and job transition programs. And it really is just like the words utility customer need to be in a certain portion. And other groups like Ameren, natural gas plants, have come at it saying we want our thing, even though it's a technical fix. I think it may proceed as is, and we may be able to, add it to another bill to just be able to avoid all of that negotiation and the folks who want other stuff. But last week, though actually I found this very satisfying, even though technically we lost on it, I was very satisfied. Because the Senate Energy Committee Chair in the Illinois Senate is somebody, we'll just say he's not a fan of me. And he has repeatedly refused to allow some of our folks to testify in opposition to bills. And there was a bill up last week that was written by the energy generators, because especially natural gas, because they want to make claims that renewable energy and battery systems are not going to be reliable, and that we're not going to get our power. The power is going to go off, and we have to keep natural gas online for ever. And that's the only way we're going to have reliable power. And so they put in a task force, and it's just a task force, but it was a task force that had the weight of the state to say that renewable energy is not reliable. And it was a task force full of fossil fuel generators and no renewable energy companies, no environmental organizations, nothing that could make a difference. And so last week, we did it popped up real quick. We did some very heavy lobbying on it. It actually only passed with 32 votes. And, embarrassing to the Senate Democratic Caucus, because there were 17 Republicans that voted for it, 15 Democrats, and then 15 voted no, and 11 took a walk and didn't vote, which is still good because it's like a no vote to us, but 32 votes. And it's over in the House now. And luckily we have Representative Robin Gable, who has it in the House. She's not a hostile sponsor, but she's going to take a careful look at it. She's somebody from Evanston that is very into climate work. And so we think we're going to be okay, but we still have an action alert on it. And I'll try to put that in here. Or if you have connections with your House or Senate member, especially in the House, making sure people know and making sure that we don't have any seizure rollbacks. It's going to be really important going forward. We have to be able to implement these programs in a successful way. So we're excited.
Thank you. That was outstanding. And Holly has joined us. She's going to take over from me when it's time to thank you. But for now, the floor is open for any questions that our folks may have. So you can unmute yourself if you'd like, or you can indicate that you've got a question in some way.
Raising hands, but I have a question, and then we can go to Betty. So, Jen, we want you here because it's Earth Month, but it seems like the International Panel on Climate Change gave us another reason why we were opportune in getting you here, because they said that we only got about 8 years to get our act together. So what's your assessment of where Illinois is? I mean, will we get to renewable energy, elimination of fossil fuels, etc., in the 8 years we have left?
Yeah, well, I'm hopeful, and I have to move forward on this, even if I don't think we'll quite meet where the deadline. I mean, our original bill closed all the coal plants by 2030, but there are a couple of coal plants, especially those owned by municipal utilities, that are pretty new and cleaner. And so those want to stay open longer because they haven't paid off their investment at all yet. And so those couple of plants are open until 2045. One of them is the 7th largest polluter of carbon in the entire United States. So we're going to have to do more work to make sure that those close. But I'm still proud of where we got in terms of the closure of coal and natural gas. I mean, Illinois is a coal state. We mine, we're in the top 10 states for coal mining. We have had coal production for a very long time. So I'm still proud of where we got, but I have to be hopeful that we're going to meet those deadlines. I think that the transportation sector really has to be next. The transportation sector now has more carbon emissions than the power sector in Illinois, and we're going down in power sector and seeing concerns in the transportation sector. So the ways that we support active transit, that we support public transportation, and then electrification are going to be more important than ever.
I see Betty and then Ellen.
Okay, I don't know, Jen, if you have the answer or if all of us together can come up with an answer. But I was talking to my nephew today, and he lives in an apartment that has gas cooking, but everything else is electric. But it's such an old building that every time he plugs in his air fryer, he has to unplug the refrigerator, and he has to unplug the microwave and everything just to use the air fryer. Or if he wants to use the microwave, you've got to unplug everything else. And it's because, and he doesn't have a circuit breaker. So every time the fuse blows, he has to go downstairs and change the fuse. Is anybody doing anything about all these old buildings with this really poor electrical wiring that has not caught up with 2021? And they would probably switch to electric cooking if the wiring was sufficient.
Yeah, Elevate, Sylvia's organization is doing so much. So there's a whole range of what we have to do there. I mean, with natural gas in homes, like we have to get to the point where we decarbonize our buildings. And there's more and more studies just about how burning natural gas is actually really harmful for your respiratory health. Even the type of natural gas that you're burning in your oven, on your stove, it actually has particulate matter in it and is damaging to people. And so we're going to have to get there, and we're going to have to make strong investments. And just heading to like long term, and I know there's an effort at the city to look at how we're going to support a decarbonization plan to just get all buildings off of natural gas. But Elevate is doing really exciting work on energy efficiency in general. And one of the exciting things there's a ton of money. And I mean, you think about clean energy, right? And you think about wind and solar. That's the pictures that you see. But the quiet giant of clean energy is energy efficiency. 70 or 80% of jobs in the clean energy sector are in energy efficiency. And there's so much that can help. We thought about energy efficiency as like shivering with the lights off, and that's what that looks like. But there's so much about energy efficiency that is improving the quality of people's lives. And so Elevate is doing a ton of work with energy efficiency. And one of the cool things that is in this bill is a health and safety fund that we have a lot of money for low-income energy efficiency programs for low-income buildings. And one of the things that people would find, the folks doing work, is they would find small things that they couldn't fix because it wasn't energy efficiency, but prevented them from fixing the energy efficiency item. So it could be things like mold. It could be things like a vent is spewing carbon monoxide into the home. And they couldn't fix it because even if it might be $20, it's not an energy efficiency item covered by ComEd. But this health and safety fund creates something that allows them to do things like correct those electrical problems, put circuit breakers in, do things for health and safety that also contribute to energy efficiency to keep people safe. So that's sort of at the low income end. If you're somebody who, there's access to other things through ComEd as well, where, and that's like a lot of those are multifamily buildings. So they have a lot of big things for that. So that one is really exciting. There are a lot of programs through ComEd for some of these things. I mean, I know I'm like a new owner and I accidentally bought, I purposely bought an electric dryer because I was like, oh, I'm going to get something that's not on natural gas. And then I spent, a bunch of money making sure that I could have the 220-volt plug for my electric dryer. So I learned as a homeowner real quick, like day one, that I did the wrong thing. And so, but that's all the stuff that we're gonna have to do to get off of natural gas in homes. And I think it's something that we're thinking about. It's gonna be long term, but we're even, these natural gas companies, one of the things that we fought last year was there's a community called Pembroke that is the south suburbs. And we have only 2% of Illinois farmers are Black, and most of the Black farmers are in Pembroke. And they don't have we have not built out infrastructure, whether it be natural gas or electricity or internet or any of these things. And we worked with a number of community members there that were farmers that didn't want natural gas extended into their community, and they wanted something else. And it's really real. Like, we're finally giving this community investment, and we're investing in technology that we hope expires in 10 to 20 years. And of course, that's what we're giving that community that we've purposely disinvested in for decades. So it is something we have to think about in our planning decisions of how do we stop new natural gas pipelines and give people what they need. But anyway, that was a longer answer than you suggested, but I'm
That's
natural
perfect.
gas.
We have to break up with our stoves, which is a harder thing too, but we have to break up with the gas stoves. Ellen, and then we've got a question in the chat.
I wanted to ask you about transportation. So really two things. So there's the all that money from the infrastructure bill, but how do we get that to be spent more on transit and multimodalism rather than on increasing roads? And sort of related is that the Chicago Climate Action Plan says that we can only reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from transportation by 2% by 2030, which just does not seem to me to be right. So I would really be interested in hearing your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I just kind of sat in a little bit of horror as we got all that federal money in, and there's Governor Pritzker at 290 widening at the airport, at the Rockford airport, where they're destroying that prairie. He's just out there talking about all these infrastructure investments that are not going to actually be good for traffic or for climate. And it was really frustrating. I think that this is, it's a push that we're going to continue to have. And I mean, right now they're rolling back the gas tax and they're sweeping an environmental fund to make sure that public transit is funded as part of it. And it's fine. I don't like it as a policy, but if we're doing this in the short term, I don't have a lot of ability. I mean, it's not fine. It's all very frustrating. But I do think there is a lot more on public transit and a lot more support that we can be getting from coalition building on public transit, active transit, our transportation investments. I'm actually, and I kind of take this tack, like, our power is from people. And we talk about building power for people and the environment. And, I work on that, but also we're working on raising money so we can hire a lobbyist that only works IDOT, the Illinois Department of Transportation, because it's a really hard place to get into. And I think we've got some good people that can help us. But just I'm definitely frustrated. And I just gave you a negative answer, and I always try to stay positive with this. But let me give you something else that I have learned within the last week, which is that 74% of all diesel gas pays no sales tax because it has some biodiesel in it. So all of these trucks out there, we're all out paying sales tax on all of our gasoline at 6.25%. All of these trucks are not. And that, 500,000 gallons or up to a million gallons a day of diesel, not paying sales tax. So just thinking about long-term revenue sources that we can get that are not adding a tax onto our electric cars. It's all going to be really important. And I don't know how we solve the transportation issue, because it is not the same as power where we can turn off a coal plant. So, but I know Jackie's been doing amazing work on this for a long time that has gotten us to a much better place than we would be, but we still got so much to do.
Jen, I just hope that what the governor was doing was election year promises that won't be kept. So that's my positive on what he was doing. But on the other hand, in terms of accountability, a number of our congressional delegation sent him a letter saying exactly what Ellen said. And that is to look at spending this money on multimodal projects, you know, not get into new highway infrastructure, et cetera. And he wrote a letter back saying, oh, we're doing all these wonderful things that we wouldn't think of doing anything like that. So it now is in writing. And so we now get to hold him accountable to what he said back to the Illinois congressional delegation. So I'll share that with you if you haven't
That's
seen
great.
it. But
Yeah.
accountability is the watchword. I'm sorry, Sylvia, I interrupted.
No, that was perfect timing. And a question from Marguerite Horberg. Good to have you, Marguerite. What would the price tag be to pay off the coal investment if that is a sticking point? And what if they were just forced to close and write off the loss? I think you talked a little bit about that, but
Yeah.
remind me of the just transition work or whatever that language is. It's complex, right?
Yeah. Well, this is particularly with Prairie State. And I'll tell you, like, my first job out of law school was working actually on Prairie State and trying to get some of these municipalities that were going to purchase Prairie State to not buy it because it was a bad deal. And it was a bad deal. I just go to these communities now and I look at their municipal utility managers, much of whom are the same old white men that were there 15 years ago. And I say, I was right. And they just, they get that look. And so, but like the hard part with the Prairie State is that the contracts are with municipalities all over the Midwest and not with utilities or individual customers. So this Prairie State, that's the 7th largest polluter, is owned by Naperville, Winnetka, Geneva. Well, I don't think actually Geneva. They're part of a different portion. So, all of these 43 communities from Illinois, as well as a bunch of rural electric co-ops, are the owners. And so we have thought about a lot of financing options that would maybe buy them out and close their share because, NRDC has done work that has shown like the price that they are paying is so much. I mean, they are paying 150% to 200% more for their power from this clean coal plant than people around them are paying for power. And so the price is so much that they could close out their share and buy renewables and still be paying less than they are now. So there is some work to be done on financing of this plant to see if we can close it earlier. I know I've talked to Congressman Caston a lot about different financing schemes, different investment schemes that could, for example, do more energy efficiency in these communities to subsidize the power that they're buying from Prairie State to close the plant quicker. But there's more work to do, and it was an extremely, like, Prairie State was the piece that almost sunk the bill because there were a lot of lawmakers that were holding their votes and asking leadership to not call the bill unless Prairie State was kept open. And the governor's office, thankfully, was like, no, this needs to close all the bill, close all of the coal plants. They need to all be closed. And so it is going to close by 2045, which is not soon enough. So we need to think of other options for these communities that don't leave the communities holding the bag, but leave Prairie State and its investors, at a loss because they're the ones that sold this really terrible project to all of these small municipalities. So that is kind of what's happening with Prairie State. And I was very frustrated. Like I said, that was my first job trying to stop them from buying it, and they did it anyway.
Someone asked, how are the unions involved in the workforce and jobs aspects of CEJA?
Yeah, so there are portions of the workforce training that does involve labor and labor apprenticeships, because a lot of these um, this bill has the biggest prevailing wage laws of any renewable energy sector in the nation. So making sure that people wherever they're working are going to be paid the prevailing wage in that community, which is we're very excited about. But that one was also a tough piece. But so there are labor training programs. So the various workforce programs are through a lot of different ways. We're creating all of these workforce hubs. There will be ways that unions are involved with them. There'll be ways community colleges are involved with them. There'll be ways that groups like the Safer Foundation and other job training and placement places will be involved in them. So there is a bunch there. There are carve outs for different sections of labor. And it was a lot of challenging conversations happen as this, because when we're talking about labor, we're talking about the trades labor in particular, that might be electrical workers or plumbers, all of that are very white and very male and have traditionally denied access to people who weren't white men into their ranks. And so how do we make sure, we had a lot of conversations about that. And if our bill was going to be focused on equity, how do we work with these trades laborers organizations? And they're going to have a lot of requirements of diversity and looking at diversity in this program that I think are really important, but maybe not all that we need to get. See, I'm saying first step here. But there are neat labor training programs. So there's a solar training program in Allsip, for example, that you can go visit, that is a whole labor facility dedicated to installing solar. And so there'll be really great ways that labor is involved in this, and labor is doing all of these different pieces. But we need to make sure we have a workforce that is benefiting. We need to have people in the workforce who benefit, who traditionally have been disinvested in, that are in these communities that have a lot of pollution and have been denied job opportunities and investment. So that's a little bit of what the bill looks like in short answer of how unions are involved.
Thanks, Jen. I asked the question, and I'm glad to hear that they are involved. And hopefully that this bill could be transformative for that section of labor, as well as for environmental justice.
Thank you, Mary. And that's that synergy also between health and our various committees. I'm going to ask Holly to do like our final questions, but there's one that we had heard from Kelly Nichols, a member of our committee. I don't think Kelly is on tonight, but she had came to us to talk about something we didn't feel we knew enough about, but it sounds interesting. And that is a coalition that's coming together on medium and heavy duty vehicles and the impact of diesel pollution. And Kelly is part of the Respiratory Health Association. What can you tell us about that, and to help us be informed about how we can be supportive?
Yeah, so we kind of talked on the end. There's the transportation investment end, right? So there's the active transportation that might be pedestrians and biking. There's public transportation. And let me just, every time I talk about transportation, I'm going to bring those up as we are prioritizing those items. But then there's electrification. And there's a lot that we have to do in terms of electrification of the vehicles on the road that involves infrastructure, but also doesn't involve infrastructure. And so there's a lot, and there are easy things that the governor can do right now to make sure that the vehicles that are being manufactured are electric. And one of the things that is especially important for communities that have just been run over by diesel is the medium and heavy duty electric vehicle MOU that a lot of governors have signed, even Republican governors. Our governor is not. I have repeatedly asked our governor to sign this, and I don't know what the deal is. I was told they were going to. So hopefully after session, they remember it again and they sign it. And so with the medium and heavy duty vehicles. This is about electrification of trucks. And so making sure that trucks, especially in communities that are, have these truck routes, diesel is terrible for public health, for children, making sure that we are replacing those trucks first that are driving into the city, into areas that already have bad air quality. It's going to be really important. And we have, thankfully, a lot of really cool truck manufacturers within the state of Illinois. We're really becoming a hot spot for manufacturing. We've got Lions Electric in Joliet that's making school buses and public transit buses. We've got Rivian that is making, and controversy with a lot of the Amazon stuff, but Rivian is making a lot of the Amazon electric trucks. They make a lot of medium duty vehicles. So we're getting a lot of that manufacturing within Illinois, which is really exciting. But we got to sign this MOU, which would commit us to seeking the clean truck standards and also clean car standards. And so those are standards that the industry would have to operate on, which would mean that they were going to have to sell more electric trucks and more electric cars throughout Illinois and throughout the nation. We were really close on these California clean car standards, which was residential, to being at a tipping point where most cars have to be electric. And, we're getting in a good spot with the clean truck standards as well. So those are both things we want the governor to do before the end of the year. Clean car and clean truck standards. There's also $80 million in VW settlement money that I have no idea why it's not being sent. And we're pushing on that as well, because there's money from the VW settlement that we would like spent as quickly as possible. I mean, it's an election year. Please go spend all the money on clean school buses, on electric vehicle infrastructure, on go buy CTA and Pace a lot more buses. So those are things that I hope that Pritzker administration will do before the end of the year. It's very important.
Maybe we can make that a campaign promise you can keep.
Yeah.
Now we understand that a lot better. Thank you, Jen. It's really the MOU, because we're like, we don't know. And McKibben was like, it's complicated. So that's very helpful. Holly, I don't know if you see my note, but if you want to pick up from here.
Yes. So one of the last questions that we have is, Jen, could you talk a bit more about how women can be lobbyists and what we can do to help to further climate justice even more in Illinois?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about is making sure that the lobbying force that are working on these bills is not just a bunch of white dudes, because I spend all of my days in rooms that is just a whole bunch of white men, and a lot of them are, 60s, 70s, 80s. And we need women of all ages. We need people of color just to come down to Springfield and be lobbyists. I mean, I think we're actually doing a great job with diversification of at least Democratic legislators. There's sometimes when I will be in the room and the only other people who are not white dudes are the lawmakers. And so I think that making sure just like, whether it's something that you want to do or whether there are young people in your life who are interested in this, making sure that they have the connections to get involved with lawmakers and come lobby and come work on these policies. It's really exciting work. It's really challenging. I mean, you have to be in Springfield. I'm in Springfield right now. At least it's warmer here sometimes. But it can be grueling, it can be really tough, but it can be so rewarding. So if there are young people in your life that want to go and become lobbyists and are interested in that, however I can help with mentorship. And I know, I have a bunch of folks on my staff that are, we're getting into lobbying, we're getting into mentorship. One of our two Springfield lobbyists, Elliot and Ariel, are down here working with me. Ariel is a Black woman, and she has been working so hard on making sure she's got a really good network of the other Black women lobbyists that are down here to support and make sure people stay in the career and have what they need to succeed, because it can be just awful. And, you know, I think like beyond an atmosphere of sexual harassment, which I think is a little better than it was a couple of years ago, there is definitely an atmosphere of sexism where there are times where people who are not the white men that you're used to are told you can't speak, or told, you know, I have people who contact my male colleagues instead of me when I'm the lead on a bill. And all that stuff still happens no matter how long I do this for. So I just, in addition to more women lawmakers, I want more women lobbyists. I want more Black and brown lobbyists down here, more folks that speak different languages, making sure that we're really represented in Springfield, because it's not just, you know, we're diversifying the electorate, but we got to diversify the people that are talking to them too. I often tell some of my lawmaker friends, you know, just tell the white men that you're not going to speak with them unless they have somebody on board that can talk to you directly. You know, thinking about who you're influenced by is really critical. And I'm hoping that that's some way that we're going to make this profession a lot more comfortable for a lot of different people to be in. So come down to Springfield. We can make a big difference. So that's my pitch. And I'll put my email in the
Jen,
chat.
as you know, been there, done that. and I'm sorry to hear you say that not much has changed since I was doing it, you know, 30 years ago or whatever. So sorry about that.
Are there any last questions? All right, well, thank you so much, Jen, for your time and the continued work that you do for Illinois and our future generations to create a more sustainable, equitable future. We do appreciate all the work that you do. And thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank
Everybody.
you, Holly. And we'll turn it back to Jackie. There may be some more announcements and things, but Jen puts in long days. We'll let you go. You'll like to come back because we don't keep you long. Tell your friends we're good. And happy Earth Month as well.
Yeah, no, I just before you go, Jen, I just want to say thank you very much. And besides Jen providing information for my organization, CNT, I also have to say thank you because IEC gave me an award. So I'm always happy for organizations that give me an award. So that's my personal thank you to Jen. And FYI for all the CWTA members that did not know that. So Jen, go back and work for us. Thank you very much. It was great seeing you. And for those of us who are left here, you know, it really is good for us to hear directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak, with some of the issues that we care about. And so, you know, looking forward to Maria Haddon coming to talk about, you know, the coming to the, I always get the name of your committee wrong, Jane, so I'm not going to say it. Jane and Dee's committee. So for folks who are late, Jane, why don't you